Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle is the sequel to the 1995 film that starred Robin Williams and basically revolved around a board game that when you played it, certain things could come to life from inside the game. You know, like a bunch of animals coming out, weird, strange plant monsters, and even a big game hunter named Van Pelt. In this version, it follows 4 teenagers who all in one day get detention at high school. And while cleaning out their school basement as part of their punishment, they find this really old game system which one of the characters, who's a nerd, doesn't recognize. He doesn't recognize the video game console, and he seems to know pretty much every single one. And so just to pass the time and give themselves a bit of a break, they begin to start playing it. Now, at the start of the film, it's shown that the board game Jumanji has been found, and this was like a couple of years before. And what was it? The new owner doesn't want to play the board game because board games have basically lost popularity with him, and he starts playing a video game. So in the night, Jumanji actually transforms itself into a video game cartridge, and so, you know, things happen, and a little bit in the future, the kids come across the video game set in their high school basement, and they start to play the game. They choose these avatars to actually play, and after everybody has chosen one, they get sucked into the game, and then they start playing as those avatars that they chose in the start menu, and they actually learn that in order to leave the game, they have to complete the game. Let's go over the performances first. So the first kid, we have Spencer, this nerdy gamer who's afraid of pretty much everything, and he's played by Alex Wolff, Nat Wolff's brother, you know, the guy who was in Death Note as Light, you know, the guy that I said in my review actually sucks as an actor. His brother is playing this kid, and he's obviously, I think, light years ahead of his brother, even though they only show him in the film for like a total of maybe 15 minutes. But he chooses the avatar of Dr. Smolder Bravestone, an archaeologist and explorer who is portrayed by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, giving a much better performance in this film than he did earlier in the year with Baywatch. Even though he was still good, it was just that the movie kind of ruined him for me. Johnson is just, he's back to being awesome for me. He does a great job portraying this character who's kind of unique to him because, like I said, he's playing a nerd who's afraid of everything. So they definitely utilize that with its humor quite a bit, and in the best kind of ways. And I thought it was funny because he's usually the first one to run off whenever trouble starts. Like, you'll see a couple of the characters standing there just looking, and he'll have already taken off through the area, or like the jungle, shrubbery, whatever. And honestly, I can watch a very confused Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson poke at his muscles because he's confused as to why they have them, and he's like admiring them. I can watch that any day of the week. And then the second one is a girl named Bethany, who is the prettiest girl in the school and a cheerleader, who, she's one of those people who just lives on social media, and her life is always revolving around whatever she puts on Instagram. And she's played by Madison Eisman, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, it's a little bit weird spelling. But she chooses the avatar of Professor Shelley Oberon, who is a cartographer, cryptographer, and a paleontologist, as well as also being an archaeologist, just like Dr. Bravestone. And the funny thing is that it's revealed later that Shelley is actually short for Sheldon, because she is played by Jack Black. And his character steals the entire show for me. Like, it was really close to being Dwayne Johnson, but looking back at it, Jack Black steals the movie for me. And the way that Jack Black utilizes the fact that he is playing a standard pretty girl in high school, except, you know, in a male's body, I don't know, it's just comedy gold. There's something that works with it. There's just something about it that works. And even though this movie is PG-13, and this is a very minor spoiler, but I initially thought that it was just going to be PG-13 for, like, the action, like what they do with it, but they do some stuff with the character of Bethany as Jack Black that I really wasn't expecting, because they have this somewhat recurring joke in the movie that has to do with Bethany's avatar being male and having a penis. I didn't think it would work, but it really was. I was laughing my ass off through the entire movie whenever this joke would come back up. The third student is a football jock who goes by the name Fridge. I actually don't remember his real name. I think it's like Anthony or something. But he's played by Sir Darius Blaine. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He chooses the avatar of Franklin Mouse Finbar, a zoologist and weapons specialist. He initially thinks that the nickname is Moose instead of Mouse, when he finds out that his character is played by Kevin Hart. Or, no, I said that wrong. He finds out that his character, who happens to be played by Kevin Hart, is actually really short when the football jock is like 6'4", 6'5", so they do play into the whole short joke sort of thing. But with Kevin Hart, I always expect to get tired of his same old shtick, but it still works in this movie. Like, he's still pretty funny doing about the same stuff that he usually does. But the highlight for him specifically was that we got to see more of his on-screen chemistry with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson like we did in Central Intelligence, though I would say that the chemistry between them in this one is slightly better. And this isn't a spoiler because it was in the trailers, but there's a shot in the trailers where it shows Kevin Hart riding on an elephant, and I'm just going to go ahead and get it out there. What he says while riding it, I think is actually meme-worthy, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see memes about it in the next month or so. I don't know, I really have a good feeling about this. And then finally, we have Martha, a shy bookworm who is played by Morgan Turner, and she chooses the avatar of Ruby Roundhouse, who is a commander and dance fighter. I know that sounds weird, but that's what she is. You would have to see the movie to understand. The avatar of Ruby is played by Karen Gillan, who, if you don't recognize her, it's only because she's slowly gotten recognition recently, and it's mainly been as Nebula in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and she's wearing makeup most of the time, so you probably wouldn't recognize her anyway. But, of course, all of you Doctor Who fans would know her as Amy Pond, and I swear, Karen Gillan in high school was my celebrity crush. I absolutely loved her. Anyway, she does a really good job in this movie, although she is definitely pushed more into the background compared to the other three, which kind of makes sense because her character is that shy bookworm, and the fact that the character is in the body of this really gorgeous woman when she's one of those people who's just like, you know, I don't want people to, like, notice me for my body and all that stuff. It plays with the humor pretty well, but like I said, she is a little bit more of a background character. Nick Jonas also has a role in this movie, and he does a pretty good job in it. He's not in enough, but I still think that he did a good enough job to where I would at least mention him. And for what I consider a tragic waste of a pretty good actor, Bobby Cannavale plays the main villain in this game, Van Pelt, which I actually learned doing some research for this video, trying to figure out the different names for the kid versions of people like Spencer and Martha and all that shit. I actually learned that this Van Pelt is a different version of the same big game hunter from the original movie, which I thought was kind of cool, but I actually, this doesn't really have anything to do with the movie, but I do wish that they had somehow found a way to nod back to it, like, you know, at some point there could have been a glitch where he actually looked like the Van Pelt in the movie. I don't know, I just thought that was cool, but they don't really, from what I saw, they didn't really even hint at it in there. It's more of, if you really love the movie and you know the name Van Pelt, then you'll remember, but even though I enjoy the movie, I didn't remember the name Van Pelt, so I didn't even think about that. But anyway, that's just me rambling and complaining. The character's only in the film for like a couple of scenes, but what they had him doing was ridiculous in one of the most stupid ways, especially when you consider that they had an actor of his talent playing the character. There was one thing that they played on early, was where a cutscene was shown setting up the main villain, and the four characters, they're talking because they can actually see it, and Spencer's like explaining what a cutscene is for the people who don't play the video games, you know, like Bethany, obviously. And I really liked how they did that, because it just seemed like they were, it was kind of like breaking the fourth wall in a sort of way, but not really. But after that, they cut back to the villain 4 or 5 times, and they never do this again. I actually thought that was a wasted opportunity. They could have done something pretty clever with it, but the filmmakers just didn't utilize the tool that they offered themselves earlier. And it may be a bit of a small complaint, but it actually did bother me. So for the story, the first 10 minutes are just a bore. They spend the entire time setting up these very stereotypical high school students, the nerd, the pretty blonde girl, the jock, the bookworm, and wallflower, with really nothing distinguishing them from others of that type of personality or stereotype. And that portion of the film is just peanut butter levels of thick with these high school drama motifs. However, once they are actually in the game, it actually, I actually began to see the first 10 minutes as completely necessary in order to set up who their characters are as people. I mean, instead of seeing Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, which is actually really hard to do, I saw Spencer. Instead of seeing Jack Black, I did actually truly see Bethany. And, of course, same with Hart's and Gillen's characters. It doesn't make the first 10 minutes you know, better. It's all still a drag, but I at least see the reasoning why they put in there. I saw the need for the bulk, I saw the need of that first 10 minutes for the bulk of the main story to actually be set up like that. The film also plays on different video game motifs. For instance, once they're actually inside Jumanji, the film starts progressing like they're progressing through a video game, you know, with levels and unlockable areas and such things like that. And they even play up on things like having dramatic music during key moments, as well as when you're starting up a level. And, let me think. Oh yeah, they have having NPCs, non-player characters for anybody who's not a gamer or, you know, just doesn't know the jargon. They have the NPCs and they show them as people, but at the same time, you know, NPCs have that, like, pre-scripted dialogue, and, you know, no matter what the characters would say, they would always stick to that dialogue, so they had to choose very carefully what they were going to ask, otherwise they were going to get some really stupid response to them. This being an action film, the action's it's okay. I mean, there were no segments where I was sitting there thinking to myself, or leaning over to Mallory whispering, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" I didn't have any of those. The action was just okay, and in ways kind of boring, because it was obvious that the director and/or cinematographer just didn't know how to shoot action sequences, because, I don't know, the cinematography's not necessarily bad, I wouldn't say that. It was just more of, I'm just saying that when you film an action sequence, you have to film it as though it looks a little bit different from everything else, but the film just feels like the same throughout when it comes to a shot-by-shot or shot-to-shot perspective. In the end, Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle is an entertaining film and is luckily a standalone. I mean, there's minor callbacks to the original, but, and though those, pretty much all of them feel forced, there's really not much. I would say like 1 or 2 callbacks, but they're very minor. Other than those, it still feels like an overall standalone film that just so happens to take place in the same universe. The performances are strong from the 4 main characters. The story is interesting, though not as good as it could have been. The villain's weak. The humor's good, and, you know, like I said, the action's okay, and everything else is just mediocre. And because of that, I will actually be giving Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle a pretty entertaining movie 3.5 reels. Well, that'll do it for me. Please subscribe if you haven't already for more reviews and content, and as always, thank you for watching, and farewell until the next video.